G'day, hi, and welcome. Well, WW3 update. I gotta say, it's been a very, very interesting week. Uh, where do I start? Okay, we're surrounded on all sides. They're circling the wagons. Got four major, maybe five major things that actually come in hitting the dots here, connecting the dots, and some stuff is actually new. Some people are making a fuss about stuff that's actually been going on for a long time, and you gotta watch out for stuff like that. I always say, don't be afraid to go over some of my older videos. Now, for those of you who've been kind of like religiously following the WW3 update stuff, you kind of keep this stuff a running log in the back of your head. So something that might not have been significant, say 4 years ago, is now coming true to be significant, right? So and stuff like that. And you see how things get blown out of proportion. You see how things get brought up when it's convenient. Meanwhile, they've been going on all along. These are some of the things we're going to talk about today. But anyway, the big news today is off the coast of Alaska, you have 5 Chinese warships that have never really, still into international waters. Now, the funny thing is, the United States is throwing a tantrum on this, and we have Barack Obama up there in Alaska on vacation. Remember, he's taken more vacation time than any other president in U.S. history and ran up more expenses than any president in U.S. history. This man is Keynesian through and through. But you get the idea. Some people are speculating why he's really up there. Is he really up there watching the whales, or is he actually, making peace with China? Who knows? Or giving the terms of the surrender. Who knows what's going on, right? But yeah, the Chinese Navy is actually, think about it this way. Again, connecting the dots. Again, everything being so coincident. Everything is a coincidence. There's no such thing as conspiracy theory. Everything's a coincidence. Let's go back a couple of weeks now. I know I have to repeat this stuff because this is how it connects. Okay. And then maybe it does connect, maybe it doesn't. But these are the events that are unfolding, and we got to talk about them, right? So we go back a couple of weeks. Chinese say we want and it's been going on for years, mind you, but the Chinese finally get the IMF to come along, the International Monetary Fund, Rothschild-owned International Monetary Fund, to basically evaluate the Chinese currency to see if it's worthy enough, basically, to join the IMF as a world reserve currency. The IMF said, okay, yeah, no problem. We'll have a look at it around September, October. And the Chinese have also talked about showing discussing how much gold they might have. All these things are kind of really scary things for the IMF, because any sort of anything that could peg a value to gold is going to be, a trump card, right? So they don't. So they tell the Chinese, okay, no, we'll consider you next year. So they're never going to let them into that club unless China gives the IMF full cooperation, which they will not. We also heard Henry Kissinger talking about they must get on board with the New World Order. The whole conflict will wipe us both out. I hate Henry Kissinger. Like, hate is a strong word for me. But this man is blatant evil. Between him and George Soros, I don't know who I dislike more, but they're just really, really bad men. So we already know that Henry Kissinger is telling us in a subliminal message that yes, we're going to war with China. Because when he says conflict, I mean, if you know the history of Henry Kissinger, this is not a good man. This is the man responsible for the instigating the Vietnam War. This is a man who's responsible for Iraq. This man is responsible for a lot. He's a puppeteer, is what he is. Now, who his puppet masters are, God knows, right? But anyway, the thing is that while he's saying stuff like that, the Chinese say, okay, well, if you're not going to take our currency as a world reserve currency, we've already got our Asian infrastructure bank system that 105 and growing nations have joined up on. And they could we'll go in, invest in countries, rather than blow them up. We're just going to, where the U.S. blows up bridges, the Chinese build bridges. I know there's a lot of my American viewers don't like me bashing on the U.S. for that, but that's typically what's going on. This is why so many people are becoming so China-friendly. South America is China-friendly. They pretty much own all the ports there. They're building that big canal, Panama Canal 2.0 over there in Nicaragua. Yes, I got it right this time. So they're building that stuff to bypass the Rothschild-owned Panama Canal. And so China's owns the NAFTA superhighway, pretty much leads to a Chinese-owned port. Almost, there's like 25 U.S. ports or something like that are owned by the Chinese. The Chinese have been coming in and buying up everything, real estate, everything here in Canada. That's what's keeping the real estate market going in Canada and the United States, is the Chinese are coming up and buying it. They call it foreign investment, but they're really the only ones that are investing is the Chinese. The Chinese middle class dwarfs the population of the United States. Think about that. And right now, there's a bit of an advantage on the currency, so they're on over the Canadian dollar, so they're buying up stuff here. They're buying everything. They're buying the world. Now, while they're doing this, they're also devaluing their currency a bit, and they're also selling off U.S. treasuries. This is what the United States is terrified of. Again, with the United States, again, I'm not picking on the American people. The American people are fine. They're fantastic. Their government is a bunch of lunatics. And basically, they have a death and debt-based economy. If people do not sell their resources in U.S. dollars, such as the petrodollar, and peg everything to the U.S. dollar, they get democracy JDAMs. You see this all around the world. Anywhere there's somebody that's going to develop their resources, if they don't sell their currency in U.S. dollars or sell their goods in U.S. dollars, they get bombed. Right? This is what happened to Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein said, "I'm going to sell oil outside the U.S. Petrodollar and take it for euros, take it for anything." And take it for gold, take it for gold-backed currencies, and next thing you know, not even a couple of months after that, war breaks out in Iraq, right? Plus, Iraq is now very mineral rich. Minerals that back in the 90s they knew of, but now they know how to get them. The whole Middle East is like this. Same thing happened to Muammar Gaddafi, and we see the migrant crisis that's going on. Again, not a single mainstream media will talk about how this whole migrant crisis was brought on by U.S. foreign policy. Yes, Hillary Clinton, all the people in the Congress, and they know this, that they should all go to jail for crimes against humanity. They're responsible for the death of thousands, the displacement of millions, and really the displacement of over a million, death of over 1 million people. Because of this, they're guilty because, again, we could track it back a couple of years ago. David Cameron, Sarkozy, all these guys, Barack Obama, and still John McCain is still lunatic enough to say it, but everybody needs to go and join and fight with the Free Syrian Army. And who were the first people, boots on the grounds, to actually arm the Free Syrian Army? Well, you guessed it, it was the United States. John McCain's best friends, al-Baghdadi, almost all the ISIS leaders are in photographs with John McCain. These are his buddies. He keeps referring to them as the good guys. They're not good guys. If you can't figure that out by now, yes, the United States created ISIS. They created it through proxy. Yes, some of the fighters or I'd say most of the fighters are legitimate, but the guys in control, like al-Baghdadi and stuff like that, they're working with the Mossad. They're working with the CIA. It's so easy to see. But anyway, we keep going with that with all these jihadi groups and everything like that. So that is what it is. But getting back to China, so we noticed that once the Chinese, about a week or so ago, started dumping U.S. treasuries and announced, how much gold some of the gold that they have in the billions, and while getting rid of U.S. treasuries, and they devalue their currency 3 days in a row, and on the third day, boom, there goes the 10th largest port in China. Basically the Tianjin explosion. Well, there's been 3 more since then, okay, or 2 more or 3 more since then, in Jiangdong province as well as Tianjin province, and these chemical plant explosions, which again, I don't know how frequent chemical explosions, plant explosions are in China, but we have to look at it a bit suspicious. And then of course a U.S. military base explosion in Japan about a week after the first explosion. So we're seeing this bizarre stuff, which, as that's going on, again, the Chinese are still, economically doing things their way, and Russia is now doing the same. They're pretty much ditching the U.S. dollar. Any of their trade partners, they won't accept U.S. currency from any of their trade partners. So what's that telling you? They're isolating the United States. And on top of that, we now have Chinese warships a week after these explosions. I think the Chinese are pissed because, yeah, maybe it's conspiracy theory and there's no way to really prove who's doing what. I don't think it's super weapons. I think it's just plain old chemistry and spy via spy sabotage. That's what I'm thinking is going on. And as a warning, yes, the Chinese are still in international waters, and again, there's no coverage on CNN how 1/3 of the U.S. naval fleet is pretty much over there in the South China Sea, surrounding China and stuff like that, provoking them. I'm not saying the Chinese are good. Their government is good. Their government's just as corrupt, or they're actually worse than the United States. But you get the idea. It's funny how when 5 warships from China come over just to say hello, saying, hey, you know what, we have warships. We're not Saddam. We're not Gaddafi. We can actually fight back. And we've seen the Chinese military parade a couple of days for their 70th anniversary after World War II. And they were displaying some new missiles. They were displaying some new hardware there for the world to see. Again, just kind of maybe coincidental, maybe not. But you can really see that, yeah, they're showing you, say, if you guys really want to push the dragon, we can breathe a bit of fire too. And yeah, some people go, oh, there's 62 to 70 U.S. warships versus the 17 Chinese warships. That's not a number that's really that relevant. If we're talking thousands on each side, okay, it's relevant. When we're only talking a handful, it's not really that relevant. The naval war is not going to last long anyway. Okay, so let's say the United States takes out all 17 Chinese warships or whatever and subs in 1 week. We'll just say that. But how many warships are they going to lose in 1 week? What, 2/3? There'd be, 20 warships left? How much coverage can 20 warships really, really, really do? I mean, yes, they can do impressive things. They have radar that can detect long ranges, and they also have satellite that gives them information around the world. But that said, the Chinese have been working on missile systems to take out those type of aircrafts. Again, I still stick by a island hopping war. It's like the Japanese did in World War II, but a little different. Rather than digging into the island with manpower and artillery and stuff like that, which they will do, but they'll probably dig into the islands with mobile rocket launchers and missile systems and cruise missiles, that type of thing. And I mean, picture one cruise missile on every island in the South Pacific. It'd be a turkey shoot for any warship, meaning naval power is absolutely going to have no advantage. It'd be unpenetrable, that type of thing. Warship to warship, the Chinese are pretty close to the United States. Remember, we're talking active duty. If both sides pull all the mothball stuff out, who knows how big that number gets. Okay, you're talking 2,500 Chinese fighters versus 3,600 U.S. fighters, that are in active duty. So again, we pull in the mothball stuff, who knows, right? So yes, I still say the technical edge is to the United States, but again, we're talking big numbers. Manpower, hands down, China. They've got a lot of people to come to kick our ass, right? So, and they're just kind of telling us, back off. The Chinese don't want war. The United States economy is, pretty much being isolated and boxed in by the Chinese and the Russians, and they know this. So if they can't get a war going with China, or they want China or Russia to strike first. China or Russia is just sending warnings. They're definitely not going to strike first. Why? They will respond. However, they did change their doctrine for first preemptive strike in 2012, meaning the Chinese will actually launch, if they believe that it's imminent, that they'll be attacked. They would launch nukes at us, and they do have submarines that can have missiles that do range about 12,000 miles. So again, there's no place they can't really hit. They don't have a lot of boomer subs, but you do really need one boomer sub with one nuke is devastating, let alone 16 nukes, right? So, you're talking 160 warheads if there's 10 on there. So anyway, that's what the Chinese are doing right now. And they're, just kind of hanging out there in Alaska, not really causing any trouble, but definitely getting noticed. And of course, your CNN and I guess all those guys are panicking stuff. But again, not mentioning that. Yes, well, the U.S. I mean, look, you had a CNN crew on that P8 Poseidon a couple of months ago. Well, because the Chinese are building islands in the South Pacific, so are the Japanese, so are I believe the Japanese or the Taiwanese, whichever. So are the people in the Philippines. I mean, but you're picking sides that, okay, well, when China does it, it's bad, but anybody else, I don't think anybody should be building islands there. But the Chinese know that the United States wants to go to war with them. What do you think the United States would be doing if it was the shoe was on the other foot? Again, the United States has a death and debt-based economy. It is collapsing. It is folding in on itself. Crazy things are happening. They're trying to find, and as the Chinese get rid of $1 trillion of U.S. debt or something like that, they're throwing away U.S. money. They don't want it anymore. This is also destabilizing Japan even more. Japan's basically got the only people that are buying up U.S. treasuries is the U.S. right now. The allies don't want it. Why? Because it's screwing up their economies, right? But that's what's going on there. So you think, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. What about the other side of the country? Well, it looks like Russia's got a electronic warfare, I guess, surveillance ship that's on its way to Cuba, again, into international waters, but it's going near Georgia, near some of the marine submarine areas that for what you call it, the electronic warfare, submarine warfare. I can't speak today. Anyway, so basically, this is also coming out of time, and there was the ETADS and what's the other one I forget. But basically, the thing that allows air traffic to be well tracked, it's going to be not malfunctioning, but unreliable between the 15th and October 1st. So between September 15th and October 1st, just as this Russian warship is going around, meaning it's kind of like the perfect kind of time for a Russian warship to be basically prowling around and getting, mapping out the microphones and because you have to understand, the ocean floor looks like a spider web full of microphones. There's cables, thousands and thousands and thousands of miles of basically wire cable with microphones on it. It goes all across the Atlantic Ocean, all across the Pacific. Up here in Canada, our minesweepers and submarines lay these cables. They're they're tens of kilometers long as they lay them, or a few miles long as they lay them down. Submarines, these are basically, rather than having submarines everywhere, they're sensors. Now the Russians, what they do is they send out divers and they cut the wires. They've been doing this for years. Now, we've been doing it to them too, but this dates back to Cold War. In fact, this is what the NSA was originally designed to do. But now they just, that's a little bit too difficult to do now. So they just, rather collect your emails and your porn sites. So, the metadata from your porn sites. But anyway, if you got a good porn site, hey, you know what I mean? What's that worth, right? So that's what the Russians are doing. And again, we know that when Obama came out and said 54 years of sanctions against Cuba, it was completely didn't work, this, that, and the other thing. Of course, that's what they would say when Russians are now paid off 90% of Cuba's debt to them. Same with North Korea. And again, the Russians are starting to arm North Korea. They've been doing this for about a year now. And same with Cuba. And Russian and Cuban relations haven't faltered. They're still there. These electronic ships typically do, I think, about a 2-month rotation. And there's also rumors of the new Yazan class and Bori class submarines prowling out there too. Now, these are the Russians' newest pride of their fleets. There's only a handful of them. There's only going to be a handful of them, but we're talking some pretty incredible submarines here. These things are nuclear powered, obviously. The Yazan class is basically a monster when you think about it. It carries 40 cruise missiles, about 38 torpedoes, and God knows what else it carries on it, about 16 or 20 shorter range missiles. This thing, and mines, a couple of sea mines, 1620 sea mines. This thing is just, I forget, go search it up. But this thing is based upon the Akula 2 kind of class submarines, but kind of brought into the future a bit. So it's a little sleeker, a lot quieter, and it doesn't sound like somebody's banging a tin can underwater as it goes by. So it is a lot quieter, and it dives very deep, but it also it's a hunter killer is what it is. But it also has nuclear missile capability, short range, but mostly this thing is going to be going after surface groups such as aircraft carriers, stuff like that. And I can imagine these things are probably prowling out there too. That's what the rumor is. But because submarines are the ultimate stealth, we never really know where they are, do we? Even something as big as the Akula Typhoon, 570 feet long, the world's largest submarine, 78 feet tall, and about 70 some odd feet wide. Double hulled, big submarine. That thing goes, does a crash dive. You can't find it for 2 months. Something that big. So think about it. And these submarines are a little bit smaller, not by much, but they're a little bit smaller. And the Bori class submarine, this is the one that concerns most people, because this is their new boomer sub, and one version carries 16 nuclear missiles, Bolivar missiles, and the other one carries 20. So you're looking anywhere between 160 and 200 warhead capability there. Again, quieter, faster. The other thing about the Yazan class submarine is the sucker does 40 knots underwater. Their fastest sub was their Alpha sub the Russians had, which was 33 knots underwater. When you think about that, okay, that's almost 3/4 of the highway speed limit here in Canada. It's 1 mile is 1.1 knots and 1.6 kilometers if you want to do the conversions on that. Okay, so there we go. So that's what the Russians are doing at the same time what the Chinese are doing on the other end after all this big fiasco that we've had with the markets and everything like that in the past week. So kind of interesting. Now there's another thing going on. We're going to talk about Iran. Well, it looks like the Iranian deal is kind of some weird stuff in there that the United States may actually side with Iran if Israel attacks it, if the agreement is broke, which I think will never happen. The United States will never, ever attack Israel. 2 reasons. Number one, Israeli pilots are really damn good. Where do you think most of the U.S. tactics come from? Where do you think the whole concept of drones come from? The Israelis. The Israelis, when they were getting their pilots shot down, they thought there had to be a better way. They started using these little ultralight drones. They were getting shot down left, right, and center, but it didn't matter because they were unmanned, right? And then they would know where to send their aircraft to do bombing runs. And Israel is a proving ground for weapons, and their pilots, again, second to none. You send American pilots up against Israeli pilots. I don't think the Israelis would win a war against the United States, but I can guarantee you the losses would be brutal on both sides. Why? Because they're both that good. You know, I mean, it is what it is. Plus, the Israeli lobby neocon faction in the Congress, no, they are never ever going to allow, Zionists are never going to allow you to attack Israel. So take that one as propaganda. Again, you have to understand the Iran deal. Okay, there's a lot of sideshow here. It really is, because they got what they wanted out of it. If the Iranians signed it, and they did. Okay, and the Iranians are saying, okay, because the Iranians aren't stupid. They said, it doesn't matter if we sign it or not. They're going to be coming for us at some point. But they said, if you break this deal, we get the right to preemptive strike you. And again, the Iranians went ahead and signed this. So Israel gets exactly what it wants. There's you know, but you can't sell it as, oh, okay, well, this is exactly what we want. You got to make it look like they're not getting what they want. That Iran's getting this sweet deal. All the sanctions are being lifted. They're sending billions of dollars to help out and pay for some of the destructive stuff for the Iranian sanctions to help them out with aid and stuff like that. So it's sideshow, it's theater. No, the goal is to go to war with Iran. Don't worry about it. They're going to war with Iran. That said, what has happened in the past few weeks too in Iran? Well, they just took delivery of their S-300 missile systems, about 4 of them, or 4 or 5 of them. I can't remember the exact number. But anyway, on the same note, you've probably heard, it's the biggest buzz now. I don't know why, because this is kind of old news. If you've been following this channel, you know what I mean. But it looks like Russian boots are on the ground in Syria. But they've kind of always been there. That's the funny part. Not in full force, no. But remember, about maybe 2 years ago, there was about 84,000 Russian and Ukrainian mercenaries that pledged to go fight along Assad in Syria. And maybe you guys remember me talking about a T-90 tank with a Russian crew fighting in Syria. There was video footage. The guy was clearly speaking Russian. Okay, I'm not so much on my not so good on my Russian yet, but I knew he wasn't speaking Syrian. I could tell. I was like, this guy is he in Syria? He sounds Russian, you know. And sure enough, he was Russian, and it was a T-90. It wasn't a T-72. So he was probably there, like anything, same way they are in Ukraine. Okay, well, we know the Assad's military is going to run the show here, but we'll give them the better training. We'll back them up, so give them a bit of a reprieve, but we don't need to put a whole bunch of boots on the ground. We're just going to fight it via proxy. And that's what the Russians, I believe, have been doing. I just haven't figured out why they haven't been doing it as much. Because we know about the gas pipelines are one of the biggest reasons why they want to destabilize Syria, but the main reason to destabilize Syria is when they attack Iran, they don't want Iran to come to the aid of, or Syria to come to the aid of Iran. You know, meaning, let's say if they went after Iran first, well, Syria would roll tanks right into Israel. So the idea is take out Syria. Then once you take out Syria, then you could take out Iran, because then you could, you know, stage, you know, your airplanes and stuff like that. But that's going to be a little difficult now, because you got MiG-31s flying around Syrian skies, which probably more likely have Syrian pilots in it, being trained by Russians. And now you've got Su-34s. That's a pretty advanced airplane right there, flying around, and apparently attack helicopters, Russian attack helicopters. So I'm assuming Black Sharks or MiL-28 Havocs or MiL-24s. But I would probably imagine that there's probably a handful of Russian pilots. I've seen some pictures of some Russian troops, again, mercenaries most likely. So they'll probably say 1 in every 100 guys is going to be a Russian. So you've now got a few things happening in Syria. You now have Russian air power, which is going to be pretty substantial. Even in low numbers, it's still pretty substantial. You've got Russian air defense, and now you have Russian tanks, and now you have Russian mercenaries, and you have Russian attack helicopters. Meaning, this is going to be the most radical cattle herding competition you've ever seen in your life. What has the coalition forces been doing with Syria? Well, they've been basically bombing ISIS off the Turkish border to herd them back into Syria. Why? To keep fighting Assad. They've also been doing this along Israel and stuff like that to keep them fighting Assad. Well, what happens when you got Russian Spetsnaz on the other side backing the Syrians, and the Iranians are there, and the Chinese are even further in that. They're kind of in there way in on the back deal, no troops or anything, but they are kind of backing the Iranians too. We've known about this for a couple of, maybe a year or so. Again, we got, again, don't be afraid to go for old videos. We've already talked about this stuff. So we also know about the base of Tartus. I mean, how many thousands of Russians did they take out of the, out of there? I can't remember. It was a lot. But we also know that Assad's been saying, hey, anytime Russian warships want to roll up onto the base of Tartus, you're welcome. I'll come and kiss you on both cheeks. So that type of thing. So it looks like what they're going to do is they're going to be going after, and we've heard what Obama's been saying for the past couple of weeks. Assad with his bad barrel bombs. Yeah, never mind Assad and his freaking barrel bombs. Now you've got like Russian Spetsnaz in there. Shit's really going to hit the fan there. But the thing is that while they're talking about overthrowing Assad, there's nobody in the U.S. Congress talking really about, well, they are kind of talking about it, but it's just hot air. They're saying, oh, well, we got to overthrow ISIS. We got to overthrow ISIS. That's the main, my prime minister's out there talking, well, the main crisis, okay, yeah, we can take on a few refugees, but we got to go out and kick ISIS's ass. Which, I agree with my prime minister, what he's saying, but the problem is that's not what they're doing. Okay, yeah, they bomb a few places. Some U.S. pilots are kind of picking up on the fact that every time they're ready to go, they're in the cockpit, they're ready to go, the engines are revved up, they're ready to go. Oh, hold pattern, hold pattern, hold pattern. Okay, now you can go. Okay, the jet ran out of fuel, got to refuel the jet. Okay, take off. There we go. We're over the target. There's nothing there. Yeah. So it seems like either, again, ISIS is the luckiest jihadi group in the world to, okay, we're 6,000 guys. We have 20,000 Iraqi military that have been trained up for the past decade by the U.S. We're going to say that if you guys don't get out of our way, we're going to kill you all. So what do? They put all their weapons on the ground for ISIS to come and pick up. They seize 2,300 U.S. Humvees. They get 70 U.S. Abrams tanks. Now, mind you, these things are being pulled around by tractors because they're, again, if you don't have, for every 1 hour of use on a Abrams, you're looking at probably about 20 hours of routine maintenance. I know on a Leopard it's like 11. The thing gets gallons to the miles. So yeah, okay, so sure, they're not really running these things at full capacity, but it's a hell of a gun emplacement. You know what I mean? Like that is. They got something like 50 artillery guns, 70,000 small arms, 20 some odd thousand from Libya there, the Chris Stevens deal that went awry and he got assassinated over that weapons deal, about 25,000 MADPAD missile launchers, basically like Eagle missiles and stuff like that. So yeah, the ISIS guys are just super lucky. And the fact that, okay, remember the highway of death in Iraq where the A-10s would just strafe with their 30 millimeter depleted uranium and 70 millimeter hydro rockets and a few 1,000-pound JDAMs and whatever, and it, just hundreds of vehicles along the highway of death in Iraq, and they didn't miss a damn thing. I mean, these A-10s would come in, 100 feet off the deck, 450 miles an hour, and they didn't miss a damn thing. They hit everything. But they can't find 2,300 U.S. Humvees, which probably have a low jack system in them. They can't find them. They just can't seem to find them for whatever reason. They can't find all those brand new ISIS, those brand new Toyotas that ISIS is riding around. I don't know why they can't find these things, but they simply can't find them. So either they're the luckiest group on the planet, or we're looking at a setup here. So again, the crisis in the Mediterranean with the poor migrants there again. Their whole world has been turned into Mad Max because of U.S. foreign policy, but yet nobody goes to jail, and they should. Crimes against humanity. Where's the brave law enforcement, military, and prosecutors? Do your job. Never mind saving the country, save the world. These are the lunatics we're dealing with. So with the Russians, if they're going to be kind of corralling these things, they're going to be coming in and moving basically the jihadis into one area. Now we know about what the U.S. Congress or the U.S. State Department said, that if Assad's troops attacked any of the coalition forces that were fighting him, basically, that were fighting ISIS, such as the what you call it, the Al Nusra Front and the Free Syrian Army. Apparently, yeah, they're not in with ISIS. Yes, they are in with ISIS. Yes, there is a lot of tribal division in Syria. There's no doubt. It's this jihadi wants to be in charge of the show instead of that jihadi groups. So yeah, there's that there. But again, look, when the Free Syrian Army came out to be, what were they called at the first? Well, they were called Free Syrian Army, but then who came and joined them? Al Qaeda. Oh, but they're Al Nusra Front and Al Nusra Front does exist, sure, but those are the Al Qaeda guys because the Al Qaeda guys they don't agree with these guys are too radical for them. They're the same guys. Al Shabaab, Khorasan group. There's IS, ISIL. The list. All of Obama's varsity team there. You know what I mean? So this is what's going on there. So the Russians are going to be basically pushing back. Again, I don't know how many troops they're going to have there. They're probably not going to disclose that. But again, we do know the Russians have interest in Syria big time. They've always been kind of Assad friendly. I'm still kind of wondering why they've waited so long to get it up. But apparently there was a big attack in Russia. I didn't catch it yet. So maybe, and ISIS claimed responsibility with this. So maybe this is a response too. But again, how many guys are there? I think it's probably the guys that were already there. Now they're just bringing in a little bit of equipment, but you could see that they got pretty much everything covered, air, land, and sea. Well, maybe not so much the sea, but they definitely got all the things that attack helicopters. So they got their close support there. They've got some tanks coming in. They've got Su-34s. So they got that's the electronic warfare. They've got drones flying around. They've also got again probably gunship helicopters and stuff like that. And yeah, so the ISIS guys, they're not going to really be able to hold that off too much. Meaning they're going to get pushed back. And this is what I'm talking about, the most massive cattle rustling competition you've ever seen. Because while the other coalition forces are going to be trying, to herd all these ISIS fighters back into Syria off the Turkish border, these guys are going to be getting their asses kicked going into the massive jaws of the Syrian army and the Spetsnaz. They're going to be getting their asses kicked big time. So they're going to be moving back the other way, meaning they're going to be pushed towards Israel. So this is going to get interesting for sure. And of course, with the Iranians backing that, you got Russia, Syria, and Iran basically working together, and China, semi sitting on the sidelines there, but they are kind of sort of helping the Iranians in some areas, like in technical stuff, probably drones and stuff like that. So we know about those deals. So the thing is that, well, you just got to keep an eye on it. But of course, the U.S. is out there saying, okay, this is not helping. This is not working. Well, right there tells you that it's a proxy army for Israel to overthrow Assad, because yes, that is working. That's not making it more destabilized. That's stabilization. Yeah, that's what's needed, is the boots on the ground. If the Russians are willing to take up that slack, I say let them. But more importantly, here we are talking about overthrowing ISIS, and there's already an army there more than willing to do this. And this army is the Syrian army. Okay, maybe you want to overthrow Assad, but you support the Syrian army. You can overthrow Assad later. You know what I mean? Like, it's the same thing that happened in Iraq. The Iraqi Republican Guard, they were going to hand Saddam over. They were willing to do it. But the goal was one of the main generals in Iraq was saying, hey, look, we'll hand you Saddam, but do not disband the Iraqi Republican Guard, because if you do, the whole country will go into chaos. There'll be no order in the streets. It'll be just a bloodbath. Was he wrong? No, he wasn't. I can't remember the name of it, but the name of the guy, but you can research it. And what did George Bush do on national TV? Well, he disbanded the Iraqi Republican Guard. And then, of course, the rest is history. But that was the grand design. Order out of chaos, that Henry Kissinger douchebag stuff that he says. Basically, if these guys are fighting each other, they're not fighting Israel, and et cetera, et cetera. But it doesn't really matter. Israel has made so many enemies. Again, there's no way they could survive in the future. Again, the United States is not. It won't matter if you have all the Christian and Jewish Zionists in the neocons there in the government, running the Congress. You have about 300 of them out of the 5, right? So the problem is that it won't matter when the U.S. economy goes, because it's going to be so isolated. It won't matter. There will be no money to go save Israel. You see what I'm saying? So it's going to be bad. It's going to be very, very, very bad. But however, if the Russians are involved, I think, I'm not discounting ISIS as, it's not game over for them. Again, people need to understand what ISIS is. ISIS is basically an idea. It's a bunch of jihad. I mean, the whole Middle East is tribal, right? It's all tribal. Many of these people don't understand the countries like Iraq, Syria, Iran. They don't understand that. They understand tribal areas. That's why you have between Saudi Arabia and Iran, you have that little tribal thing going on with the Yemenis and the Houthis there. And we also see what you call it, Saudi Arabia using all the banned Geneva Convention weapons that they got from the U.S. against the Yemen, Yemeni people. So we see all that stuff going on. But the thing is where the oil fields are in Saudi Arabia is Shia, is a Shia area. So they're loyal to the Shias in Iran. They're not loyal to Saudi Arabia. This is going to be bad for Saudi Arabia. And we also know Saudi Arabia has no friends either, because again, they're angry at the U.S. trying to become energy independent, in a sense that they want to do the fracking and all that. That's why they started pumping so much oil to drive the prices up. But they've also done it to destabilize Iran, because Iran, again, they pump oil. They actually have more oil than Saudi Arabia. They just don't have the means of refining it. The Iranians wanted to work out a deal a couple of years back with the Saudis, saying, hey, we'll send you the oil, you guys refine it, we'll cut you in on a deal, right? Sound fairly reasonable, and both regions will prosper. But that doesn't typically happen when you've got these kind of control freaks that, new boss the same as the old boss, right? Next to that, we also know about the pipeline going through Turkey, and it's going through Syria, and it's going to go into Iran, and from Iran, it'll probably go through Pakistan and then make its way up to China. And then right there you have all these nations that will be completely energy independent of Saudi Arabia, but not only that, they're energy independent of the United States. So there'll be no need for any of these countries to do any business with the United States whatsoever. So you can see how this is going to isolate the U.S. dollar. This is what we're seeing happen. Is it happening right overnight? No. This has been going on for years. It's going to go on for a few years more probably. But we are seeing it. We are seeing it again. The United States, and this was nothing that hasn't been talked about or called on, saying, yeah, the U.S. foreign policy is designed to get as much hatred for the United States, to isolate the United States as much as possible, to have as many enemies as possible, to constantly be able to go to war. Death and debt-based economy, right? Take our money. You don't take our money, you get democracy JDAMs. Again, most of the United States, people in the United States are fantastic people. Like most places in the world, it's the governments around the world are just all nuts. So we've got to keep an eye on these things. It's been a wild week when you really think about all the things that are going on. You see all that subliminal messages basically going. China's showing its military might, and again, them prowling 5 of their warships out to an area they don't normally go to. At the same time where Barack Obama's basically up there in Alaska having a so-called vacation, if that's, maybe there's something else going on there too. Again, we'll have to keep an eye on that. Remember, there was a month or so ago when Obama and Putin called each other, or Obama called Putin or whatever. Got to wonder what they were talking about. We know about the electronic warships. Electronic warfare ships that's now being tracked by U.S. Being shadowed by U.S. warships, of the Russians on the other side near Georgia, where the submarine bases are, some submarine bases are. So what are they going to be, what are they spying on there? So we'll have to keep an eye on all this stuff. Like anything, same old story in a lot of ways, but everything is a response. So what's the one up on that? And of course, there's military drills going everywhere. There's a little bit of a rumor of some British troops that were apparently a little bit drunk in the United States there a couple of weeks ago or a week ago or whatever, talking about that apparently the Jade Helm thing. And take this one with a grain of salt. The Jade Helm thing, I don't think is going to be the round people up. I think it is more what I say is getting ready for that big war in the Middle East. I agree with that one, but most importantly that people are same thing in the Ukraine, and there's more tanks now, Abrams tanks now entering Ukraine. From what I heard, we'll have to keep an eye on that. I think it's on the other side of the Ukraine, but they're being put all over the place. In other words, everybody's getting into play and into place. Again, it would be very convenient with Jade Helm if a war broke out, all the soldiers just happened to kind of need where they be. They're already set up. They could just strengthen the numbers where they need to. So that's what you have to look at. So in other words, all the militaries on the planet are on patrol, and of course up there in the Arctic, the Russians are still doing a lot of stuff up there. They've been conducted a few missile drills in the past week or so ago, or maybe a couple of weeks ago now. So all these things are kind of sort of normal, but sort of out of normal because of the scale of them. But when we see, again, Chinese warships, almost a week after having 4 explosions after their biggest victory parade, again, the victory parade in China, 12,000 personnel, a few hundred vehicles, a few hundred aircraft. Pretty impressive. For a parade, it's bigger than most militaries out there. So when you look at it, yeah, the Chinese are showing us, yes, we don't want to go to war with you, but if you do, this is what you're going to be up against. And they're much better armed than we give them credit for. They're much better trained than we give them credit for. Remember, the average Chinese person, okay, these are the people that save more per capita than any other nation on the planet. The people take care of themselves. They know that if they don't do it for themselves, the government, look, one thing about a communist government is they're completely void of socialism. Communist governments really don't give you out any social benefits. They're not socialists. They're just communists. They're just control freaks. So basically, everybody in China, you want a retirement? You got to take care of it yourself. Your grandmother's gone a little bit long back and climbed the walls. Too bad. She's going to have to live with you because you're the retirement home. That's the way they live there. Next to that, you really see a lot of people in China, massively, out of shape. Not really. I mean, have you ever seen just watch some videos on Chinese military exercises. Some of them are completely off the wall funny, especially with the hand grenade training. If they have more soldiers like that, okay. But I mean, that's the rookie guy, right? That's the rookie guy. And of course, you see a lot of these military blunder videos out there. But then look at their elite forces. These guys are doing insane things. These are just, sure, it's kind of sideshow freak, kind of ninja kind of, okay, they're not ninjas, I know, wrong country, my bad, but you get, they're kind of running up and down poles, and they're doing stuff, they're hanging upside down, changing tires while the, the motorbikes, with the sidecar changing the tires, they're cracking boards over each other's heads, they're doing all kinds of crazy stuff like that. But the most thing you need to understand is they're in shape. And a lot of them, especially when you see 5,000 guys synchronized katas, so to speak, or I know again, probably in the wrong domain there, but you get the idea that they're fighting synchronized. Their discipline on their fighting style is going to be pretty crazy. Now let's talk about the Type 97 Chinese carbine, okay? Never mind the caliber. There's something about that rifle that you need to understand, and something you don't typically see on the M16s or what we call the C7 rifle up here in Canada is the bayonet lug. It's gone. We don't use those anymore. The close quarter stuff, they don't use that. The Chinese, they still use the bayonets. Why? Because they are going to get that close to you. That's what they're counting on. They're going to, that ideology of overwhelm with numbers hasn't changed. These people will all run at you at once. 10,000 guys running at any position. Some are going to get through, even if you wiped out 9,000 of them. The idea, the concept back in the Cold War was the same as now. Now, mind you, they are a lot smarter now. They're not all going to come at you from this. It's not going to be a frontal attack. It's going to be coming at you from, more like Bavarian Viking style. They're going to come at you from every angle all at once. They did this in Vietnam too. But basically, the concept was if you could basically overwhelm your opponent. You might lose a lot of guys. You might even lose a battle or two, but you might win the war. And there is, the Germans, they kind of use this. They called it the Blitzkrieg, where as soon as they're, rather than hunkering down, as soon as the shooting starts, you run at the guy. You rush the position and stuff like that. Problem is the refinements were you had to learn that you had to come at them from all different angles rather than coming straight in at the machine gun emplacement, right? So common sense, but that said, this worked in North Korea a lot of times, more often than not, which, again, if you're not hunkered down or have a strategic placement, they could take your position. So you got to keep that in mind. That's how these guys are going to fight. But most importantly, they now have technical stuff to back them. A lot of missile systems, a lot of, enough aircraft, good aircraft. Maybe, look, that the J10, J11, J10, it's like a delta wing forward canard single engine little airplane that they have. They've got quite a few of them. It's Chinese designed, and the thing is it can turn and burn in 15 seconds. This thing will keep up to the F-16C in a turn, no doubt about that. It's light, it's fast, it's maneuverable. How good is it really? I don't know. I mean, hopefully they build their Chinese military equipment like they build everything else, and it would be crap and it would break down. But I don't think they do. I think it's good enough. Again, these things, I think they're going to be deadly. And again, we know, just watch how they train. I mean, these pilots, they train a lot different than and the warships and stuff like that. Just look at the firepower they have. It's pretty substantial. Again, so with the U.S., lunatics in the Congress there, if they think they can actually, like, and the problem is people say, no, we're never going to go to war with Russia or China because it would just be a suicide mission. Yeah, okay, the winner has 5 people left in their country. Ooh, wow, big victory, right? No, everybody's going to lose on this. What the problem is when you listen to the elites, at first you think they're joking. But then you realize that no, these people actually mean what they say. They do want to go to war. There's so many of these Cold War generals types that are out there saying, yeah, we need to go kill Russians here, go kill Russians there. Yeah, but they can kill you too. They're going to kill your sons and daughters. You know what I mean? Again, anybody that's out there advocating for war is a lunatic. This is an unwinnable scenario. Look, a bunch of jihadis, hard enough to take out a bunch of jihadis when they actually want to take them out. Can you imagine well-trained Chinese or well-trained Russians? And remember, the Russians and the Chinese, okay, yes, they put on a good game face, but they are scared. Their government knows that the United States wants to go to war with them. They know NATO is on the brunt end of that stick. That's why they're forming their own version of NATO with Iran and India and possibly Pakistan. Think about it. When Pakistan and India start siding together, things are bad. That type of thing. And Russians. So that's why they're doing it. Look, the rest of Europe is kind of sitting back and saying, hey, you know what? We don't think this whole kind of U.S. foreign policy in the Ukraine is working for us because it looks like the right sector guys are completely out of control. They're running the show now. They're overthrowing Poroshenko again. It's funny how like Ukraine today and again, that's the propaganda machine that the United States put, under the Ukrainian Freedom Act. They started, putting money into that. And something like 250 million into propaganda or whatever it was, some ridiculous number, to counter Russian propaganda, right? But even they're out there saying is, oh well, these ultranationalists are going to be a problem for us. Well, you sure didn't complain about them when they were overthrowing Yanukovych. When the country was corrupt and sure the economy was bad, but now it's pretty much tanked and you've got a civil war going there. Maybe the right sector, the Azov battalion, and the Ukraine military, like I said, Poroshenko doesn't have control of them. He never did, and I don't think he ever will. Because I'm pretty sure those people know that they're had by all sides. Now, one thing Dmitry Yarzov did say a few times is that, and this is right from the beginning of the Maidan coup, that, hey, you know what, we want to kick everybody out. We want to kick out the Russians, we want to kick out the Americans, we want to kick out the EU. They're ultranationalists. So the thing about that is if they actually make good on what they do, well, it's going to be bad for them anyway, because the United States is going to throw them under the bus. Again, the Ukrainian oligarchs that sold out their country, it looks like a lot of them have been taking U.S. and, all this, EU money, and I guess here in Canada we put $495 million. George Soros is $7.5 billion, with the U.S. State Department coming in there. I don't know, I think, $15 billion from for the Eurozone, all that money going into the Ukraine. Well, it looks like a lot of that, the Ukrainian politicians have been just kind of siphoning that off into banks in Cyprus. And, again, so is the new boss better than the old boss? No, everybody, they've stole the Ukrainian gold. They've basically seized, the banks have come in and seized farmland and resources, pennies on the dollar. They've, instated all these foreigners in charge of all the major infrastructure and stuff like that. It's just a mess there. But it's a purpose mess. It was done on purpose. So I'm pretty sure people, doesn't matter what side of the country they're on, they know that they've been had by all. So the only thing that the Ukrainians can really do is fight to the death at this point. I mean, they've been thrown under the bus. There's no future for the Ukraine. The Ukraine is done. It's dead. That's it. Now, once the United States says, okay, well, we can't make a headway there. Okay, well, fine. We give up. Russia can have it. Well, then, there will be no ultranationalists left in Ukraine, and Russia will roll tanks in there with Russian Federation on there. But they're not going to do it right away. Again, Russia can bleed out the proxy war there for years. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up with that. So that's kind of the crazy stuff that's going on, keeping the world interesting. Again, why would anybody watch reality TV shows that are fake when they could watch reality? Anyway, just my take on it. So anyway, if you like this kind of content, please consider making a donation for the channel. Thank you so much to everybody who has. Links down below, and that money is only for the channel. About $400 is what I've made so far. Once I get up to about 1,000, I'm going to poll it, see what you guys want me to get. I know most of you guys are going to say the same thing, get a new damn camera. But I'm also thinking of the green screen and stuff like that, so I'm going to research and stuff like that. But we're a while away from that. But the sooner people make the donations, the sooner I get there. So But anyway, next to that, you can check out my WW3 Facebook, WW3 Updates Facebook page, and you can comment and post, anything links, and you guys send me fantastic links. Thank you so much. I don't always get a chance to check them all out, but even if I miss it, maybe you guys. Again, this channel is as much yours as it is mine. The message is much more important than the man, and I really do want to make sure that as much information can get to the people, so you can connect the dots. So sometimes I miss stuff, but I might catch it a week or two later. But at least if you get to hear it now. Share amongst yourselves, comment. Maybe you agree with me, maybe you thought, okay, Reg, you need to make a correction here because you didn't consider this. Throw it in there. I want to keep this as honest as possible. I really don't like the idea of being a fear monger or anything like that, but I also like connecting the dots. It's a scary topic, but I want to keep it as real as possible and as honest as possible. So anyway, with that said, the other thing you can do is definitely share, like, and comment, and be true to yourself, be true to others. Always do the right thing, and have yourselves a great day, eh? G'day, hi, and welcome. Well, WW3 update. I gotta say, it's been a very, very interesting week. Where do I start? Okay, we're surrounded on all sides. We're circling the wagons. Got four major, maybe five major things that actually come in hitting the dots here, connecting the dots, and some stuff is actually new. Some people are making a fuss about stuff that's actually been going on for a long time, and you gotta watch out for stuff like that. I always say, don't be afraid to go over some of my older videos. Now, for those of you who've been kind of like religiously following the WW3 update stuff, you kind of keep this stuff a running log in the back of your head. So something that might not have been significant, say 4 years ago, is now coming true to be significant, right? So and stuff like that. And you see how things get blown out of proportion. You see how things get brought up when it's convenient. Meanwhile, they've been going on all along. These are some of the things we're going to talk about today. But anyway, the big news today is off the coast of Alaska, you have 5 Chinese warships that have never really, still into international waters. Now, the funny thing is the United States is throwing a tantrum on this, and we have Barack Obama up there in Alaska on vacation. Remember, he's taken more vacation time than any other president in U.S. history and ran up more expenses than any president in U.S. history. This man is Keynesian through and through. But you get the idea. Some people are speculating why he's really up there. Is he really up there watching the whales, or is he actually, making peace with China? Who knows? Or giving the terms of the surrender? Who knows what's going on, right? But yeah, the Chinese Navy is actually, think about it this way. Again, connecting the dots. Again, everything being so coincident. Everything is a coincidence. There's no such thing as conspiracy theory. Everything's a coincidence. Let's go back a couple of weeks now. I know I have to repeat this stuff because this is how it connects. Okay. And then maybe it does connect, maybe it doesn't. But these are the events that are unfolding, and we got to talk about them, right? So we go back a couple of weeks. Chinese say we want and it's been going on for years, mind you, but the Chinese finally get the IMF to come along, the International Monetary Fund, Rothschild-owned International Monetary Fund, to basically evaluate the Chinese currency to see if it's worthy enough, basically, to join the IMF as a world reserve currency. The IMF said, okay, yeah, no problem. We'll have a look at it around September, October. And the Chinese have also talked about showing discussing how much gold they might have. All these things are kind of really scary things for the IMF, because any sort of anything that can peg a value to gold is going to be a trump card, right? So they tell the Chinese, okay, no, we'll consider you next year. So they're never going to let them into that club unless China gives the IMF full cooperation, which they will not. We also heard Henry Kissinger talking about they must get on board with the New World Order. The whole conflict will wipe us both out. I hate Henry Kissinger. Like, hate is a strong word for me. But this man is blatant evil. Between him and George Soros, I don't know who I dislike more, but they're just really, really bad men. So we already know that Henry Kissinger is telling us in a subliminal message that yes, we're going to war with China. because when he says conflict, I mean, if you know the history of Henry Kissinger, this is not a good man. This is the man responsible for the instigating the Vietnam War. This is a man who's responsible for Iraq. This man is responsible for a lot. He's a puppeteer, is what he is. Now, who his puppet masters are, God knows, right? But anyway, the thing is that while he's saying stuff like that, the Chinese say, okay, well, if you're not going to take our currency as a world reserve currency, we've already got our Asian infrastructure bank system that 105 and growing nations have joined up on. And they could basically, we'll go in, invest in countries, rather than blow them up. We're just going to, where the U.S. blows up bridges, the Chinese build bridges. I know there's a lot of my American viewers don't like me bashing on the U.S. for that, but that's typically what's going on. This is why so many people are becoming so China-friendly. South America is China-friendly. They pretty much own all the ports there. They're building that big canal, Panama Canal 2.0 over there in Nicaragua. Yes, I got it right this time. So they're building that stuff to bypass the Rothschild-owned Panama Canal. And so China's owns the NAFTA superhighway, pretty much leads to a Chinese-owned port. Almost, there's like 25 U.S. ports or something like that are owned by the Chinese. The Chinese have been coming in and buying up everything, real estate, everything here in Canada. That's what's keeping the real estate market going in Canada and the United States, is the Chinese are coming up and buying it. They call it foreign investment, but they're really the only ones that are investing is the Chinese. The Chinese middle class dwarfs the population of the United States. Think about that. And right now, there's a bit of an advantage on the currency, so they're on over the Canadian dollar, so they're buying up stuff here. They're buying everything. They're buying the world. Now, while they're doing this, they're also devaluing their currency a bit, and they're also selling off U.S. treasuries. This is what the United States is terrified of. Again, with the United States, again, I'm not picking on the American people. The American people are fine. They're fantastic. Their government is a bunch of lunatics. And basically, they have a death and debt-based economy. If people do not sell their resources in U.S. dollars, such as the petrodollar, and peg everything to the U.S. dollar, they get democracy JDAMs. You see this all around the world. Anywhere there's somebody that's going to develop their resources, if they don't sell their currency in U.S. dollars or sell their goods in U.S. dollars, they get bombed. Right? This is what happened to Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein said, I'm going to sell oil outside the U.S. Petrodollar and take it for euros, take it for anything. And take it for gold, take it for gold-backed currencies. And next thing you know, not even a couple of months after that, war breaks out in Iraq, right? Plus, Iraq is now very mineral rich. Minerals that back in the 90s they knew of, but now they know how to get them. So the whole Middle East is like this. Same thing happened to Muammar Gaddafi. We see the migrant crisis that's going on. Again, not a single mainstream media will talk about how this whole migrant crisis was brought on by U.S. foreign policy. Yes, Hillary Clinton, all the people in the Congress, and they know this, that they should all go to jail for crimes against humanity. They are responsible for the death of thousands, the displacement of millions, and really the displacement of over a million, death of over 1 million people. Because of this, they're guilty because, again, we could track it back a couple of years ago. David Cameron, Sarkozy, all these guys, Barack Obama, half the, and still John McCain's still lunatic enough to say it, but, everybody needs to go and join and fight with the Free Syrian Army. And who were the first people, boots on the grounds, to actually arm the Free Syrian Army? Well, you guessed it, it was the United States. John McCain's best friends, al-Baghdadi, almost all the